Any genuine Ouija stories? One day, my partner got the idea to buy a Ouija board and use it with a few friends. I wouldn't say we were complete skeptics, but I don't think any of us were really expecting anything wild to happen. We went on the internet and looked up how to safely use one and plan out what kind of questions we should ask. We didn't really want to use it at our house, so we gathered up a couple friends and I drove to a state park a few towns over. We start to head up the hiking trail and find a good spot to lay the board down. We begin going through the motions of asking if there was a spirit who would like to communicate, etc., etc. The planchette moved with ease. It's a really strange, powerful feeling when it glides across the board. The planchette it came with was a thick hunk of plastic, and there was quite a bit of friction when trying to intentionally move it on the board. We were a bit stunned that the darn thing was working. We asked the spirit if it was a good spirit. Of course, the planchette moved over to no. We then asked if it wanted to harm us. Planchette moves over to yes. My partner asked how it would go about doing this. The board began to spell out ENGINE. We see a group of hikers coming up in our general direction, and we carelessly put the board away without properly saying goodbye. We hike back down to another secluded area and decide to try again. This time, we come into contact with a spirit who claims to be a 6-year-old boy who died sometime in the 1800s. Seemed nice at first until he told our friend he wanted him to die so he would have someone to play with. We decide to ask the board questions only we would know the answers to. Each person asking the question took their hands off the planchette to be certain. The board got every darn question correct, and that's when I started to feel a bit uneasy. I honestly couldn't believe it. The board then proceeded to spell out my name. I wasn't really sure why. Soon after, it began to rain, so we told the board that we had to go and asked it to help us bring the planchette down to goodbye. It complied. We all begin walking back to my car when I notice this woman sitting in an SUV next to mine, watching us. Her gaze never really left, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We all get in my car and I go to start it, and the engine doesn't turn over. It was almost as if the battery was dead, but my accessories still worked. I begin to realize I hadn't had my car for very long, and it never gave me trouble. It seemed like way too big of a coincidence. I look over at that woman and put my window down and ask her if she has jumper cables. She reaches behind her and pulls them out, as if she had them ready. We get out of my car and hook them up when my partner's friend's phone rings from a number he doesn't recognize. He picks it up and it was someone just asking if we were okay. He chalked it up to the fact that a drug dealer previously had the number, so he got a lot of unknown calls. Weird. We start chatting with this woman and thank her for letting us use the jumper cables. Turns out, she has the same name as me. Which the board had previously spelled out, perhaps a warning? She tells us that she works as an ultrasound technician at a local hospital and has cancer and young children. We ask her what she was doing in the parking lot, to which she explained she was waiting for her Calaxian dealer. Medical Calaxian is legal in my state, so I was a bit perplexed but didn't think anything of it. I was just grateful she was helping us. I go to try and start the car and it still doesn't work. It just kind of rolls for a few feet in the parking lot before shutting off. At this point it's getting dark, and I begin to come to terms with the fact that I'll have to call a tow truck. Our friends ended up getting picked up, and my partner stayed with me as we waited for the tow truck to arrive. We told the woman she could leave since she was still weirdly waiting with us. She offered for us to sit in her car while we wait because it was raining again. I asked her if she could pop the trunk so I could sit on the ledge, but she told me the trunk didn't open. So, stupidly, I get in her car with my partner. The weird woman made a joke about disabling her child safety locks in the back, so I won't think she's trying to keep us here. That rubbed me the wrong way. She starts telling me that maybe I should just leave my car there and offered to give us a ride home. I politely decline. Then, she tells me that she has a friend whose husband works for VW and he could surely fix my car for a good price. She calls up her friend, and because we were in the car, it was quiet enough that my partner and I could faintly hear the other line. She explains the car problem and asks how much it would be to fix it. We hear on the other line the person ask if I am a boy or girl. The woman says girl, and the man on the line simply said, good. Nope. We get out of the car and tell her the tow truck should be there soon, and thanks for her help. We gave her the Ouija board and told her she could keep it because we didn't want it anymore. I still wonder what she did with it. She kept trying to get me to give her my phone number and kept saying she would come with me to get my car fixed from her friend. Eventually, she pissed off. We ended up getting back home late. Told the AAA guy how we were playing around with a Ouija board and met the weird lady afterwards. He said he wouldn't have picked us up if he had known that. The next day, my partner opened his texts that he sent out when we were waiting for the tow. In a conversation with his mother, the text box had, "Yes Satan yes," written out. The message wasn't sent, but he sure as heck didn't write that. The next day I called the hospital to see if that woman even worked there, like she had claimed. Nope. They transferred me to 2 different floors, and there was no ultrasound technician working there with my name. I still don't know how to explain what happened that night. And I'm sure as heck never using a Ouija board again. Also, the dealer the woman claimed to be waiting for never even showed up. So, what she was doing that night and what her intentions were, I'll never know. As a teenager, we did this a lot in our friendship group. We didn't use a board, but a cup or glass and letters on paper spread around the table, as well as yes and no. The board game version isn't super common here, Australia. We would get varied spirits responses each time of different strength on moving the glass around. Except for one friend who had the same spirit come each time she played. We talked to this spirit many times. One day, there were about 8 of us hanging out at this girl's house, and we decided to play. She called her spirit and it came right away and was really strong. The glass was zipping all around really quickly and forcefully. One friend of a friend who was there didn't believe in any of this and just joked that we were all pushing the glass around. So we asked the spirit if it could move the glass if we all held hands in a circle instead of touching the glass. It said yes, so we all took our hands off the glass and held hands in a circle. I was watching really closely as we all joined hands, and the second that the last set of hands touched, the glass flew across the table, hit the wall and fell onto the floor. There was no way that anyone could have pushed it as all of our hands were visible. There was clear space under the table and no one was under there, and the glass wasn't magnetic or anything. We all screamed and broke hands and ran out of the room. To this day, 20+ years later, I still can't explain how that was able to happen, barring some supernatural or psychokinetic explanation. I used to use one all the time, until one time I used it in my garage with my friend, and the spirit attached itself to the board. So whenever I used the Ouija, she would come back but be stronger. She would be moving the planchette faster and with more force. She kept coming back and eventually my friend and I agreed that if we got her again, we would destroy the board. And when we got her again, we cut it up into 7 pieces and buried it. But after that, many weird things started happening in my house, which is a long story, and she never left. I can still feel her presence, but I've found that as long as I don't give her attention, she won't bother me or do anything. She resides in my attic. I can still feel her watching me years later. Well, funnily enough, she never bothered me, she always messed with my sister. I've always had trouble believing all the stories she has told me, but I'll tell you guys a few of them. One night when my mom had left on a business trip, I fell asleep watching Forrest Gump on the TV in my room. Then I was sleepwalking into my sister's room. I never sleepwalk, and I put my cup down on her dresser and said, "Let's go." Since my sister knew I was asleep, she decided to entertain me. She said, "Where are we going?" "Follow me." "Where are we going?" "The mirror in my room," I said, "but there's no mirror in my room." "Where does that lead to?" said my sister, "Hell." And after I said that, my sister said I started speaking in tongues, so then my sister thought it was a good idea to follow me into my room. Apparently, I had paused the movie on the part where his mom dies at the end, and I pointed to the screen and started laughing. The only thing I remember from that night was waking up to my sister saying the Hail Mary prayer, and I was really scared for some reason, so I ran outside away from her. I ran to my garage, which was where I originally talked with the Ouija board. She said, "Why are you going to the garage? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "You're hurting me, it's safe here." And honestly, I don't know why I even said that. I just remember being drawn there, like it was a sanctuary. I never opened that garage door because I finally came to and was feeling pretty confused as to what was going on. Then my sister took me to a nearby church parking lot and told me everything that happened. I believed her at the time because she was so terrified and she knew something evil was afoot. Many things happened after that, like music blaring from my computer that was turned off in the middle of the night, and when my sister yelled for it to stop, it got louder and louder and louder until it suddenly stopped. Right above her in the attic, she heard extremely loud footsteps going from one end of the attic to the other very fast. Once it got to the other end, it slammed the door to the attic. I can only assume it was on the ground floor at that time and was watching us once again. She said that it sounded like it wasn't running on just 2 feet either. The sound it made it seem like it was on all fours. Somehow, I never heard any of this and was sound asleep in my room that was right next to where this all happened. When I was in high school, I worked for the city in one of the public libraries. There were several of us high school students there. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the library was open later, so we had a lunch those nights. One of those nights, my friend brought her Ouija board to work. There were 4 of us teens, 3 of us participated. Steven chickened out, but he stayed to watch. Fairly quickly, we were able to establish a connection with a spirit. She told us her name. We asked multiple questions about whether she was a demon or ghost. She told us that she had died in a car wreck. She gave us some details about her life, like playing basketball in high school, how she was killed, etc. We kind of played it off. When our lunch was over, one of the ladies who worked the circulation desk asked us about our lunch. I told her that we were playing with the Ouija and recounted the spirit that we were talking about. I mentioned the name, don't remember the name now, this was nearly 30 years ago, and Abby went white. She started to shake and sweat. Turns out that she grew up with the spirit and went to high school with her. She was supposed to be in the car the night that the spirit was killed. There were 4 girls in the car, 3 were decapitated, the other was ejected from the car and died on the side of the road. Working in the library, I decided to do some research on microfiche. Found the newspaper article about the accident. Cemented my belief that we had made a connection. Could my coworkers have been messing with me? Yes. I don't believe it, though, due to Abby's reaction. It screamed genuine to me. Haven't touched a Ouija since.